A very good evening to all of you. I hope all are well. Very good evening to all the participants, all the students, Ritik, Darshan, Bhumika, Subham, Rushita, Susil, Rajiv, Aisa, Komal Prajapati and all. The today topic is invoice, debit credit note, and then the next class would be on e-way bill. So this would be basically on the documentation part, which is important from exam point of view as well as practical understanding point of view. Okay. So let me start the topic. Invoice, accounts and records. If I'm dividing the discussion in the goods and services, if I am supplying the goods, then what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? The question number 1 is, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? If there is a movement of the goods, suppose I am making the supply. Suppose I am making the supply of the goods to you. And as a result of the supply, there is movement. Then what is the last date? The movement of the goods. In case there is a movement of the goods, then last date to issue the tax invoice will be the date of removal. What is the last date? Date of removal of the goods. And in case of no movement was caused, then the last date would be the delivery of the goods. Now the similar point we are discussing, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice for supply of service? What is the last date to issue the tax invoice for service? Now for that, it has been divided in 3 parts. In normal circumstances, you are allowed to issue within 30 days. In normal circumstances, you are allowed to issue within 30 days. And if the supplier is the banking company, financial institution, NBFC, and insurance. Remember the 4 names: insurance, banking, FI, and NBFC. In this case, they are having the time limit of 45 days. They are having the time limit of 45 days. And third category, again, you will find all these names: banking, financial institution, NBFC, non-banking, NBFC, plus one more name is added, that is telecom operator. It means in the 45 days, the telecom operator is not added here, not given. But in this case, what is the case? We will discuss. But in this case, the 4 names are same plus one telecom operator. So if I will ask normal question, what is the time limit to issue the tax invoice for telecom operator? Then you will say 30 days. 45 days का relaxation में, 45 days की time limit में, the telecom is not added. So it is covered by the normal provision. Now the third category, in case of the distinct person. So suppose I am ICICI Bank Delhi and I am raising the invoice to the ICICI Bank Mumbai. One pen multiple GSTN is called as distinct person. If the invoice is raised between distinct person, if invoice is raised between distinct person by these 5 categories of the supplier: banking, financial institution, NBFC, insurance, and telecom operator, then they are allowed to issue the invoice before or at the time of such supplier record the same in his books of accounts or expiry of the quarter. So they have the time limit till quarter they can recognize this or they can issue the tax invoice. Going back, क्या पढ़ा हमने? हमने ये पढ़ा कि गुड्स के केस में अगर मूवमेंट है तो डेट ऑफ रिमूवल, अगर मूवमेंट नहीं है तो डिलीवरी. सर्विस के केस में हमने 3 पार्ट में डिस्कशन डिवाइड किया. नॉर्मल केस में 30 डेज, जो 4 कैटेगरी था एनबीएफसी, बैंकिंग एटसेट्रा, उसमें 45 डेज, और लास्ट था उसमें विद इन क्वार्टर. क्वार्टर तक भी मैं बिफोर द एक्सपायरी ऑफ सच क्वार्टर आई कैन इश्यू द टैक्स इनवॉइस। ठीक है, अब हम बात करते हैं मल्टीपल टाइप ऑफ द डॉक्यूमेंट। सेक्शन 31 सबसेक्शन 3 टॉक्स अबाउट रिवाइज्ड इनवॉइस, कंसोलिडेटेड इनवॉइस, पेमेंट वाउचर, receipt voucher, refund voucher, self-invoicing. Multiple type of the document is being discussed in the 31 subsection 3. We are starting one by one. First is revised invoice. What is the concept of revised invoice? Let's say that I was liable to take the registration on 1/4/2023 because my turnover crossed the threshold limit, etc. So I was liable to take the registration on 1/4/2023, and what is the time limit to take the registration? 30 days. So I have applied on 25th April 2023, and the certificate of registration is being granted on 5th of May 2023. The 1st April 2023 is the date of liability. It means any supply made by me on or after 1st April, I have to pay the taxes. This point we have discussed also yesterday. 25th April is the date of application and 5th of May is the date of registration. Then what is the revised invoice? Whatever the supply made by you or made by me from date of liability till date of registration, then I am required to issue the revised invoice within 1 month. A registered person within 1 month from the certificate of registration can issue the revised invoice against the invoice already issued, where or in which period, beginning with the effective date of the registration till the issuance of the certificate. So between this date, we have also discussed the concept of effective date of registration. Correct? If the registration is applied within 30 days, then the date of the liability would be the effective date. Otherwise, date of the grant of the registration certificate. In this example, because I am saying that application has been made within 30 days, so the date of liability would be the effective date, and the supply made between effective date till the certificate. Whatever the supply I have made, I have to issue the revised invoice within 1 month. Okay? And please tell me the supply made by me between this period, effective date till the date of the certificate of registration, it has to be disclosed in which return? Yesterday, we have discussed that this supply would be disclosed in the return. Which return? Kindly tell me. एक रिटर्न का नाम पढ़ा था, एनुअल रिटर्न. कौन सा रिटर्न था वो? सेक्शन 40. यस, बट वो रिटर्न कौन सा था? हाँ दर्शन, थोड़ा डिस्कशन किया था हमने वहां पे भी टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई में, बिकॉज वी नीड टू कैलकुलेट द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई, सो आई हैव गिवन द सम डेट. आंसर इज फर्स्ट रिटर्न. थैंक यू सो मच. So that fine. Now a registered person may not issue the tax invoice if the value of the goods or services or both supplied is less than 200. Subject to such condition, and restriction in such manner as may be prescribed. Where it is being prescribed, if you refer the fourth proviso to the rule 46, they are saying if the transaction is B2C and customer does not want the tax invoice, customer does not want the tax invoice in that case. If the value is less than 200, then you can issue the consolidated tax invoice on per day basis. Point to be noted, we will discuss the consolidation of invoice, one at per day basis, and at one place we will discuss per month basis. Consolidation of tax invoice on per day basis when, if it is a B2C and value is less than 200 per transaction and customer does not want, in that case I can issue the consolidated tax invoice instead of single individual tax invoice. ये बात हुआ consolidation per day का. We will also discuss that in case of the banking company, the consolidation is per month. It is permitted that you can do the consolidation on monthly basis. Now, yesterday we have discussed one thing, that bill of supply would be issued. Yesterday we have discussed one thing, that bill of supply would be issued in two cases. The bill of supply would be issued. The bill of supply would be issued in two cases. Please tell me in which case supplier has to issue the bill of supply instead tax invoice. मतलब मैं टैक्स इनवॉइस इशू नहीं करूंगा, बिल ऑफ सप्लाई इशू करूंगा. कब? सिचुएशन नंबर 1 एंड सिचुएशन नंबर 2. पहला राइट आंसर मुझे मिल गया, दर्शन ने मुझे दिया, वेरी गुड. Please tell me that bill of supply will be issued in which circumstances? First is composition levy, all are correct. Now, what is the second circumstances in which the bill of supply would be issued instead of the tax invoice? First is composition levy. And second, if I'm registered as a regular category and I am making the exempt supply, मैं अगर रेगुलर कैटेगरी के रूप में रजिस्टर्ड हूं एंड आई एम मेकिंग द exempted supply, Divyanshi Agrawal, thank you so much. If I am making the exempted supply, then I will issue the bill of supply. So this is what is it written, that bill of supply would be issued. Registered person supplying the exempted goods and section 10. So in two circumstances, he is allowed to issue the bill of supply. One, if supplier is registered as a composition levy, and second, if the supply is of exempted goods or services. Again, here the consolidation is also possible, less than 200 wala point would same applicable here also. A registered person. Now the clause D. What is the receipt voucher? If I am receiving the advance. So tell me one thing. That advance for goods or for services, in which transaction I have to pay the GST on the advance? I have received the advance for supply of the goods. I have received the advance for supply of the services. Kindly tell me in which category I need to pay the GST on advance. किस सिचुएशन में मुझे एडवांस के ऊपर टैक्स देना पड़ेगा? सप्लाई ऑफ द गुड्स और सप्लाई द सर्विसेज और बोथ. The right answer is only the supply of service. The right answer is supply of service. Now, the point to be noted, whether it is for supply of the goods or supply of services, you need to issue the receipt voucher. Sorry, you need to issue the receipt voucher in both the cases. Now read the language. Now read the language. It says that a person, a registered person, on receipt of advance payment, whether it is goods or services, shall issue the receipt voucher containing such particular as may be prescribed, where the details or where the content are being given. Rule 50. Okay. Next point is, if suppose I have taken the advance from you, this advance I have to return to you because of any reason. Contract is cancelled. As per the agreement, I have to return if I have not performed the work within the stipulated time. In case the advance which I have taken, for which I have issued the receipt voucher, and the amount has to be returned, then I will issue the refund voucher as per the content given in the rule 51. Now, in case of the reverse charge, you have given the in case of the reverse charge, we need to issue two documents. Can you please tell me, in case of the reverse charge, which document is required to be issued by the recipient? दो document है which is applicable in case of RCM. RCM के केस में दो documentation के requirement है. Can you please tell me which document to be issued in the reverse charge transaction? The first is self-invoice and second is self-invoice and second is payment voucher. Now try to understand that will this document be always required to be issued? The point is, will these two documents, what are the name of the document? We have discussed the name of the document is self-invoice and payment voucher. Now, will it be required in all cases? Now, in case of the self-invoice, if the supplier is registered, then it is not applicable. If the supplier is unregistered, yes, it is need to be issued by the recipient. 31 subsection 3 clause F. In case of the payment voucher means when the payment is being made by the recipient to the RCM supplier. Supplies on which RCM is paid by the recipient. When the recipient make the payment to the supplier, then he will issue the payment voucher in both the cases. That is important, that in case of the self-invoice, it is applicable only if the supplier is unregistered, but the payment voucher would be applicable in both the cases. Please do not get confused that payment voucher would be issued when the recipient make the payment to the supplier only for the RCM transaction. See, I know that in my books of accounts, for every payment, we are making the payment voucher. But in the GST, the payment voucher is something different. Why something different? Because in the GST, the payment voucher means the payment made by the recipient to the supplier for RCM supplies. Here, one more confusion may arise, that you may say the receipt voucher to be made when the recipient making the GST ka payment to the government? No. It will be made only when the recipient make the payment to the supplier for the RCM transaction. I hope it is clear. Any question? You are. मोहम्मद सोहेल या बैच का तो मुझे मालूम नहीं है कब स्टार्ट होगा. दैट यू नीड टू डिस्कस विद द ICAI. मुझे नहीं मालूम. URP मीन्स अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन. यस, यहां तक क्लियर है. वी हैव डिस्कस्ड 6 डॉक्यूमेंट. नाउ quickly tell me the name of the 6 document which we had just now discussed. 1-2 मिनट में फटाफट आंसर कर दीजिए. एक बार क्विकली 6 नाम बता दीजिए मुझे. कौन कौन से 6 नाम जो हमने 6 कैटेगरी ऑफ द डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़े थे, इसका एक बार आप रिवाइज करवा दीजिए मुझे. How recipient pay to the supplier when we are paying through RCM and supplier? We are not talking about the tax. We are talking about the value. Say, I am advocate and you are my recipient. Okay. If I will give the service, let's say rupees 1 lakh. So I will not charge the tax. You will pay the tax to the government, but you will make the payment of rupees 1 lakh to me. You will make the payment of rupees 1 lakh to me. For this 1 lakh, you will issue the payment voucher. Is it clear? Sejal, I think आपने थोड़ा लेट ज्वाइन किया. I request because we had the discussion of 20 minutes. So I request एक बार आप रिवाइज मतलब वीडियो रिवाइज करना. अगर कंफ्यूजन रहे तो you can ask in the next and the last class. ठीक है. So क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंट था? Revised invoice, okay. Bill of supply, receipt voucher and उसका रिटर्न किया तो रिफंड वाउचर, पेमेंट वाउचर एंड सेल्फ इनवॉइस. These 6 डॉक्यूमेंट we have discussed. ठीक है, चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. So now let me move to the content of tax invoice. Rule 46 talks about what should be there on the tax invoice. There are multiple content. We will discuss one by one. First, name, address and GSTIN number of the supplier. Name, address and GSTIN number of the supplier, obviously. Then it is talking about consecutive serial number not exceeding 16 character. So मैक्सिमम कितना नंबर हो सकता है इनवॉइस का? 16. इन दिस 16 दे आर सेइंग you cannot use any special character. Only 2 special character are allowed, dash and slash. So these 2 special character are allowed. You can have multiple series if you want. For example, let's say I am doing the consultancy for which I will use my one series. Let's say I'm providing the teaching, so I will use the different series. I'm also doing the training to the corporates. For that, I can have the different series. There is no problem if supplier is making the multiple series, no problem. Only requirement that the number should be unique for a financial year. The number should be unique for a financial year. This is all about the numbering. Then date of invoice, name, address and GST number of recipient if registered. Now try to understand that what is the requirement to mention the address of the recipient in case of unregistered person. What is the requirement to mention the registered party? And the value of taxable supply is greater than equal to 50,000. In that case, it is the compulsion on the supplier to report the name and address of the recipient and delivery address along with the name of the state and code on the tax invoice. In other words, I can say if the value is less than 50,000, it is optional, not mandatory. Second part, name, address of the recipient and delivery address along with the name of the state and code. If the recipient is unregistered and the value is less than 50,000 and request to record, B2C का ट्रांजेक्शन है. अगर वैल्यू मोर देन 50,000 है, 50,000 और मोर है, तब तो मुझे कंपल्सरी रिकॉर्ड करना ही पड़ेगा. अगर वैल्यू लेस देन 50,000 है and if the value is less than 50,000 and supplier making the supply to unregistered party and unregistered party requesting to record that address, in that case, it is compulsion to record the address in case of the B2C. And this is a new proviso. You must aware, just make a knowledge that in case of the e-commerce operator, supply made by or through ECO, then it is compulsory to record the name, address of the state along with code on the invoice, even if it is a B2C. तीन बात की है, तीनों इंपॉर्टेंट है. Please make a note. See, if I'm asking the question that supply is B2C, if I'm asking the question that it is a B2C supply and you tell me when I am mandatory to record the address of the recipient. मेरा क्वेश्चन ध्यान से सुनिएगा, मैं रिपीट करता हूं मेरा क्वेश्चन. अगर मैं B2C सप्लाई कर रहा हूं, कस्टमर अनरजिस्टर्ड है, मुझे आप वो सर्कमस्टांसेस बताइए. तीन सर्कमस्टांसेस है, मेरे क्वेश्चन का आंसर तीन आपको पॉइंट बताने पड़ेंगे. इन विच सर्कमस्टांसेस इट इज मैंडेटरी ऑन मी to record the address of the unregistered customer. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है, बिलीव मी. जस्ट थिंक एंड देन गिव मी द रिप्लाई. एक बार आप सोचिए और मुझे बताएं कि कौन कौन सा सर्कमस्टांसेस होगा जिसमें रिकॉर्ड करना जरूरी है. फर्स्ट इज दर्शन. अब तीन सर्कमस्टांसेस में आपने मुझे दो बता दिए, मैं फर्स्ट किसी और को दूंगा. सेकंड आपने मुझे बता दिया, थर्ड आपने मुझे बता दिया. एक और सोचिए जहां पे वैल्यू का क्राइटेरिया है. यस, तो मैं क्या कह सकता हूं, लेट मी वेट फॉर ए मिनट टू रिस्पॉन्ड बाय ऑल द पार्टिसिपेंट. If the transaction excellent, value is okay. ओके फाइन. एक बात बताइए, ये ग्रेटर देन 50,000 है या ग्रेटर देन इक्वल टू 50,000 है? मतलब 50 से ज्यादा होना चाहिए, 50 या उससे ज्यादा. इज इट ग्रेटर देन और ग्रेटर देन इक्वल टू? मिस्टेक मत करना एग्जाम में. इट इज ग्रेटर देन इक्वल टू. In case of the B2C supply, if the value is greater than equal to 50,000, situation number 1. Situation number 2, that if the supply is B2C, if the supply is B2C and value is less than 50,000, but customer requested to record the address. And third is in case of e-commerce transaction. ठीक है, चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. HSN code, description, quantity. See, what is the HSN code? What is the HSN code? Harmonized system of nomenclature. क्या मतलब होता है? ये ना 4 डिजिट, 6 डिजिट और 8 डिजिट या 2 डिजिट. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मैं टीचिंग कर रहा हूं तो इसका एक डिजिट है, नंबर ऑफ कोड फिक्स है, लाइक 5208 फॉर गुड्स समथिंग, कोई एक ट्रांजेक्शन होगा, लाइक 9967 इट इज ए ट्रांसपोर्टेशन सर्विसेज. तो वर्ल्ड कस्टम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन WCO, हमारी जो इसको एक वर्ड बोलते हैं टैरिफ. सो ओनली फॉर योर नॉलेज आई एम शेयरिंग दिस वर्ड. आपके एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से रिलेवेंट नहीं, बट ओनली फॉर द सेक ऑफ क्लैरिटी, ओनली फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग. देखो, टैरिफ का मतलब क्या होता है? जहां से रेट और जहां से कोड मिलता है मुझे. तो जीएसटी का जो टैरिफ है वो कस्टम से डिराइव हुआ, और कस्टम का जो टैरिफ है वो वर्ल्ड कस्टम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से डिराइव हुआ, वहां से लिया गया. तो बेसिकली द कोड फॉर एवरी ट्रांजेक्शन, एवरी गुड्स और एवरी सर्विसेज इज कॉल्ड एज HSN code. Sometime we are using the word SAC for services and HSN for goods. क्या मतलब HSN? Harmonized System of Nomenclature. SAC का मतलब सर्विस अकाउंटिंग कोड. बट दोनों का मतलब एक ही है कि जो हम कोड यूज करते हैं ना टू डिस्क्राइब द नेचर ऑफ माई ट्रांजेक्शन, दैट इज HSN code. We will discuss how much digit is to be reported on the invoice based on the aggregate turnover. We will discuss in some time. Next is description, quantity, total value, taxable value, rate of taxes, amount of taxes, POS, that is place of supply, delivery address if the same is different from the place of the supply, whether tax is payable under reverse charge. So if I am advocate and I am registered in the GST, when I will issue the tax invoice to you, because I am registered, I have to issue the tax invoice. But when I will issue the tax invoice to you, I will mention the tax is payable under reverse charge because of the clause P. Signature or digital signature. Now, what is the QR code, embedded IRN number? That is E-invoice. We will discuss in some time as a separately. इस point को हम separately discuss करते हैं, but rest, is it clear? Any question, kindly let me know. If you have any question, please let me know. Now, इसकी बात करते हैं. E-invoicing से related दोनों content है, clause R and clause S. We will discuss, but बाकी content, is it clear to all? सुशील, HSN एंड SAC ये यूज किए जाते हैं. मुझे अगर मेरी एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर 5 करोड़ से ज्यादा है तो मुझे 6 डिजिट मेंशन करना जरूरी है ऑन माय टैक्स इनवॉइस. Second, when I'm filing the GSTR1, yes, I have to report there also. Every commodity, yes, and every transaction, whether it is goods or services. Miss Rachna, yes, it is clear, it is defined. क्लियर है ना सभी को? चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं। ठीक है, नाउ ई इनवॉइसिंग में हम वापस दोनों क्लॉज का डिस्कशन करेंगे। वेट फॉर ए मिनट। अब हम बात करते हैं वापस ओरिजिनल बात क्या थी। अगर मेरा ट्रांजेक्शन सप्लाई है तो गुड्स के केस में लास्ट डेट हम पढ़ चुके हैं, सर्विस के केस में हम लास्ट डेट पढ़ चुके हैं। नाउ अगेन आई एम डिस्कसिंग, बट दिस इज ए कंटिन्यूअस सप्लाई of goods or services. For example, let's say on daily basis, Mr. A is making the supply of the goods at your location. And there's a contract that he has to deliver the goods for 10 days, 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, whatever. It is called as continuous supply of the goods. Then question comes, what is the last date for the continuous supply of the goods? We'll discuss. Similarly, what is the continuous supply of the service? But in case of the continuous supply of the service, one point is important, that in the definition itself, they have given the time frame. It should be for a period exceeding 3 months. Plus with periodic payment, second condition. The first condition is the time period, and the second condition is periodic payment. If these two conditions are satisfied, then it is called as continuous supply the service. Let's read the definition. Continuous supply the service means the supply of the service which is provided, agreed to be provided continuously or on recurrent basis under a contract for a period exceeding 3 months. इंपॉर्टेंट बात क्या है, टाइम पीरियड फिक्स किया है कि कम से कम 3 महीना से ज्यादा दोगे तभी वो सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस को कंटिन्यूअस माना जाएगा. एंड पीरियोडिक पेमेंट, इट कैन बी मंथली, इट कैन बी क्वार्टरली, इट कैन बी हाफ ईयरली, इट कैन बी वीकली, बट पीरियोडिक पेमेंट होना जरूरी है. इफ द डेफिनेशन is required to be written in the exam, the two word is important for continuous supply of the service. One is exceeding 3 months, second is periodic payment. Include supply the service as the government. Okay. Now the continuous supply the goods means supply the goods which is provided or agreed to be provided or continuously on recurrent basis under a contract, whether or not by means of wire, cable, pipeline or other conduits, and for which supplier invoice the recipient on a regular or periodical basis, and include the supply of the such goods as the government may be subject to such condition as may be specified. Okay. Now, in case of the continuous supply of the goods, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? And in case of the continuous supply of the service, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? This we are going to read. A slight amendment हुआ है, right? Now, if it is a continuous supply of the goods, then statement of account, successive statement of account or successive payment are involved. The invoice shall be issued before or at the time of statement is issued or as the case may be, payment is received. So if the statement of account or successive payment on weekly basis, I am required to issue the statement to you, or on fortnightly basis, you are releasing the payment to me. So you have to issue the tax invoice to the extent of statement of account or to the extent of payment are received. Now we are talking about continuous supply of service. In case of the services, the continuous supply of the services when there are three clauses. When the due date of the payment is ascertainable from the contract, when the due date of the payment is ascertainable from the contract, then invoice shall be issued on or before the due date. अगर आप due date, see, in case of the continuous supply of the service, everything is linked to the payment. If according to the contract, you can decide the due date, then invoice shall be issued on or before the due date of the payment. If due date is not ascertainable, then actual payment, when payment is being received by the supplier. And third is when the payment is linked to the event, completion of an event. Let's say in case of the real estate sector, there is a contract that once the structure of the building is completed, the recipient has to pay 10%. When the floor is being started, then the recipient has to make the additional 10%. When the respective floor is being completed, then the recipient has to make the payment of 15%. When the particular flat is being completed, then recipient has to make the payment of 30%. And on final delivery, the balance payment would be made. In this case, I can say the payment is linked to the completion of an event. Payment is linked to the completion of an event. So the payment ka due date, then the invoice ka due date would be, what is the time limit to issue the invoice? That will be when the event is being completed, invoice has to be issued. Whether payment is being received or not received, doesn't matter. In case of cessation of the contract, so if the contract is before completion, it has been cancelled, then invoice has to be issued to the extent of the supply being made before this such cessation. Goods sent on approval. What is the time limit for goods sent on approval? The time limit is 6 months. क्या कहना चाहता हूं मैं? See, suppose on 18th July, I am removing the goods. I am removing the goods on 18th July for supply. If the removal is for the supply, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? And it has been reached to the customer on 19th July. Can you please tell me what is the last date to issue the tax invoice if the goods are being removed on 18th and reached to the customer on 19th July? What is the last date to issue the tax invoice? The transaction is of the goods. What is the last date to issue the tax invoice? July 18th, 19th July, 6 months from the date of the removal, 30 days from the date of the receipt of the goods. What is the right answer, or any other date which you think? Goods is removed for supply. Goods is being removed for supply. How 16th September will come? Why 18th December? Divya, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. This point is not yet explained by me, not completed by me, the sent on approval. Before that, I have asked one question because it is linked with this. See, if you are removing the goods, for supply, then the last date is date of removal. What is the last date to issue the tax invoice in my current example, 18th July? You are removing the goods for supply or other than supply? You are removing the goods for supply or other than supply? The answer is supply. Then the date of the removal would be the last date to issue the tax invoice. Now, if I am removing the goods for reason other than supply, like sales on approval. So I am sending the goods to the customer, but it is not a supply because he has to check, identify, and once he confirms, then it will be treated as a supply. If the goods are sent on approval, sales on approval, they are saying the date of removal plus 6 months. Let me read the provision once again. The invoice shall be issued before or at the time of the supply or 6 months from the date of the removal, whichever is earlier. Everyone please confirm that the concept of supply, other than supply, date of removal, 6 months, everything is clear to all. 6 months is maximum. Either let's say after 1 month, the customer is saying now the goods is okay. So it means on completion of 1 month, when the customer convey the acceptance, it will be treated as supply. Maximum time limit is 6 months from the date of the removal. Is it clear? एक बार confirm करो. Divya, you have asked the question regarding the sales on approval. Is it Varsa? Any specific confusion or this particular part I have to explain everything once again? Okay, let me repeat once again. If I am supplying the goods, what is the last date? As per section 31, first slide of the discussion, that date of the removal of the goods would be the last date. So ISA, 18th July would be the last date to issue the tax invoice if it is a supply. Now, sometime we are supplying the goods, we are sending the goods, but it is not supply, it is approval basis. So it will reach to the customer. Then what is the last date to issue the tax invoice? They are saying the date of the supply when he convey his acceptance, or max to max, it will be the 6 months from the date of the removal. So if it is a supply, last date to issue the tax invoice would be the date of removal. If it is not a supply, sales on approval, then you can say that you are not required to issue the invoice at the time of removal. Max to max, you can wait till 6 months. If in between the customer confirm that yes, goods is accepted, you can issue the tax invoice. Then in that case, it will be the last date, or max to max 6 months from the date of the removal. That will be the last date to issue the tax invoice. एक बार confirm करो, is it clear? Removal means भाई मेरी फैक्ट्री है लेट से दिल्ली में और आप है हरियाणा से, ठीक है? आपने जब मुझे ऑर्डर दिया तो मैं गुड्स पैक करके रिमूव करूंगा ना अपने यहां से आपको भेजने के लिए. I am removing the goods. Removing means dispatching from my location to you. That is the removal. right, Bhumika? So either the नहीं अदर देन सप्लाई डेट ऑफ द रिमूवल और नो डेट ऑफ रिमूवल नहीं, डेट ऑफ सप्लाई। सी समझिए, एक मिनट वापस मैं बताता हूं, भूमिका का पॉइंट कंफ्यूजन में समझ गया। जो ये 6 मंथ है वो तो डेट ऑफ रिमूवल है, ठीक है, और सप्लाई विच एवर इज अर्लियर। सप्लाई कब होगी? लेट्स से आज मैंने 18 जुलाई को गुड्स मैंने अपने यहां से रिमूव किया, आपको, आप मिस्टर बी है लेट्स से, और सप्लायर मिस्टर ए है। गुड्स मिला लेट्स से 20 जुलाई, ठीक है। अब आपने चेक किया, सब कुछ ठीक किया, और आपने कहा, मान लो 15 अगस्त को आपने कहा कि नहीं अरुण ए, गुड्स इज ओके, यू कैन ट्रीट द सेम एज ए सप्लाई, इट इज एक्सेप्टेड बाय मी, it is accepted by me. So it means on 15th August, when Mr. B has communicated his acceptance to Mr. A, that will be the supply. So क्या हो गया? 15 अगस्त 1 तारीख हो गई, the date of supply, and 6 months from the date of the removal. So आप कैलकुलेट कर लेना 18th Jan something like that, जो भी आएगा। मैं नंबर ऑफ डेज एग्जैक्ट कैलकुलेट नहीं कर रहा, इट विल बी लाइक 17th Jan और 18th Jan और 15th अगस्त विच एवर इज अर्लियर। ये डेट ऑफ रिमूवल नहीं है, ये डेट ऑफ सप्लाई है। गो बैक टू द प्रोविजन वंस अगेन, बट इट इज रिटन द इनवॉइस शैल बी इशूड बिफोर और एट द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई और 6 मंथ फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ द रिमूवल। एट द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई है, ना कि एट द टाइम ऑफ रिमूवल। सो 6 मंथ फ्रॉम द रिमूवल और सप्लाई, सप्लाई मतलब जब उसने अप्रूवल दे दिया, किसने? कस्टमर ने। किस चीज का? जो गुड्स मैंने भेजा था, अब वो अप्रूवल दे रहा है, ही इज सेइंग दैट यस इट इज एक्सेप्टेड बाय मी एंड यू कैन रेज द टैक्स इनवॉइस। इज इट क्लियर भूमिका? एक बार कंफर्म करना बेटा। क्लियर ना? ठीक है। व्हाट इज द what if the goods are returned back to the supply? तो ठीक है, सपोज करो आपने गुड्स मुझे रिटर्न कर दिया, so that is okay. If I am sending the goods, either it should be returned back or it should be accepted. रिटर्न हो गया तो बात खत्म ना, जो मैंने आपको भेजा माल वो वापस आ गया, मैटर क्लोज, कोई भी सप्लाई नहीं करनी मेरे को, कोई भी इनवॉइस नहीं बनाना। डैमेज्ड इन ट्रांजिट, तो फिर क्वेश्चन आएगा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किसका है, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में कौन लॉस बियर करेगा, दैट ऑल द क्वेश्चन विल कम। और आपको याद है आईटीसी के चैप्टर में हमने डिस्कशन किया था कि आपको अगर कोई लॉस है, गुड्स लॉस्ट, डिस्ट्रॉय, 17 सबसेक्शन 5 क्लॉज एच, मुझे आईटीसी रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा, दैट्स इट। बट टैक्स इनवॉइस बनाने की जिम्मेवारी या टैक्स इनवॉइस इश्यू करने की कोई रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं होगी मेरी, एज्यूमिंग, बट यस दिस आंसर वुड ऑल्सो डिपेंड अपॉन द फैक्ट ऑफ द केस। चलो सर आगे बढ़ते हैं। बेटा क्लियर है ना? ऐसा क्लियर है ना? मैं आगे बढ़ रहा हूं। सेक्शन 31 सबसेक्शन ए टॉक अबाउट द फैसिलिटी ऑफ द डिजिटल पेमेंट टू द रिसिपिएंट। द गवर्नमेंट ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ द काउंसिल प्रिस्क्राइब द क्लास ऑफ द रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन हु शैल प्रिस्क्राइब्ड मोड ऑफ द इलेक्ट्रॉनिक पेमेंट फॉर द गुड्स और सर्विसेज and give option to make the payment accordingly. So that is a provision which talks about the facility of the digital payment. Yes, but we will discuss in detail. Now, just now we have discussed that the number of the HSN code required to be mentioned on the tax invoice. Correct? How much? It depend upon your aggregate turnover. Aggregate turnover, if it is less than 5 crore, if it is less than 5 crore or up to 5 crore, I can say in case of the B2B, 4 digit is mandatory. For B2C, it is optional. आप चाहें तो 4 डिजिट बना सकते, 4 डिजिट का आप रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं। अगर आप चाहें तो आप इग्नोर भी कर सकते हैं। इट इज कंप्लीटली द चॉइस ऑफ द सप्लायर टू रिपोर्ट और टू इग्नोर। इन केस ऑफ द B2C, the option is available, but it is available only when the aggregate turnover is up to 5 crore. If the aggregate turnover is greater than 5 crore, then whether it is B2B or B2C, 6 digit would always be required to be mentioned. Section 31A, what does it say? It says that you will, in certain category of the taxpayer, you will accept the digital payment. So we will discuss the provision when it is applicable, but it say that matlab ki means you will accept the payment on the digital, like digital mode. Instead of cash, you will prefer the mode of payment digital, electronically. Let's move further. Please, meanwhile, one question in between. I'm asking one question. If I am receiving the advance payment for supply of the goods, question number 1, do I need to pay the GST on advance? Question number 2, which document is required to be issued? My question is, if I have received the advance for supply the goods, question number 1, whether GST need to be paid on advance. Question number 2, which document need to be issued? I have asked 2 questions. Kindly give me the answer, like first ka and second ka, both together. First, do I need to pay the GST on advance for supply of the goods? Answer would be yes or no. Question number 2, you just need the name of the document if it is required. The right answer is no. The GST is not required to pay the supply on goods except composite dealer. Thank you very much, Rajiv Kumar Singh. I have not thought of that composite dealer. When I asked the question, I have not think of the composition dealer. Thank you so much, Miss Rajiv Kumar Singh, for highlighting the composition ka point. And second, which document I will issue? I will issue the receipt voucher. Thank you. Thanks to all. Now, what is E-invoice? What is E-invoice? That point we are discussing. E-invoice क्या है, हम लोग वो discuss करने. Do you know that what is the limit for E-invoice? E-invoice is applicable to which category of the taxpayer? This is my question. If you are aware, then tell me. If you are not aware, no problem. Your aggregate turnover exceeding so much of the limit, then E-invoice would be applicable. If you remember, then please tell me. If you know, I think we have discussed probably or not. We have not discussed as of now, but yes, E-invoicing, when your aggregate turnover is greater than 10 crore, when your aggregate turnover exceed 10 crore, then E-invoicing is applicable. And from next month, not important from exam point of view, but just only for the knowledge point of view, I'm telling, that from next month, August, the limit is going to be reduced to 5 crore. 10 crore. Abhi, as of now, kitni limit hai? More than 10 crore. What is the future limit? 5 crore. What is the meaning of e-invoice? Sir, e-invoice, does it mean that generating the invoice on the government portal? No. Does it mean that generating the invoice on the government portal? Answer is big no. Then what is the meaning? You will make the invoice as per your current system. Let's say you are using the Tally, or you are using the, let's say, any SAP, Oracle, any accounting software which you are using, you have to make the invoice according to that system. After making the invoice, then you will upload the details on the government portal, which is also called as IRP, Invoice Registration Portal. So you will make the invoice as per your accounting software in the same manner as you are doing currently. After generating the invoice, the details would be uploaded on the government portal, government e-invoicing portal. And once you generate the IRN and QR code, see, once you upload the detail in the e-invoice portal, then two things will come. One is IRN, one is QR code. That you have to affix on your invoice. जो वो QR कोड आता है और जो IRN नंबर आता है, IRN, Invoice Registration Number, and QR code, that you have to affix on your invoice, and that invoice will be called as e-invoice. Now this entire process, either you can do the manually, or with the help of certain organizations, certain software company are providing the integration facility with your accounting software and the government invoice registration portal IRP. So once you click the invoice in your accounting software, within a few seconds, it will redirect it and come back with IRN and QR code. So both the facility you have, it's your choice that how you like to generate the IRN. Manually can be also uploaded from the front end on the GST portal, on the GST e-invoice portal. Second, if you want, you can integrate your accounting software with the government portal. Now, the e-invoicing. If the 48.5 says every invoice issued by the person to whom sub-rule will apply. What is the sub-rule? 4. It is talking about e-invoice. It says that the class of the registered person as may be notified. Such particular contained in INV1 after obtaining IRN number by uploading the information contained therein in the common GST electronic portal. What is the portal? We will discuss. But what is the name of that portal? IRP, Invoice Registration Portal. The three terms are important in the e-invoicing: IRP, IRN, and QR code. (48.5) says if sub-rule 4 is applicable on any registered person, sub-rule 4 applies on any registered person, then if invoice is issued in any manner other than the manner which is being specified, then it will be treated that you have not issued the invoice at all. See, Mr. A, whose aggregate turnover is more than prescribed limit, and he is compulsory required to issue the e-invoice. Okay. Now what happened? he has not issued the e-invoice for a one transaction, but he has issued the manual invoice, accounting invoice. 48.5 says that invoice will not be considered as e-invoice at all. It will be considered that you have not issued the invoice at all. Shall not be treated as invoice. So in other word, I can say it should be on the real time basis. Let's talk about further. This is the notification, principal notification. It says that e-invoicing would not be applicable on the government department, local authority, SEZ unit, and those referred in subrule 2, 3, 4 and 4A. Subrule 2, 3, 4 and 4A कौन है? GTA, Goods Transport Agency, Passenger Transportation Service, Banking Company, Financial Institution, NBFC, and Cinematographic Film, Multiplex Screen. How much or how many persons are not required to issue the e-invoice? I can say that the government department, local authority, SEZ unit, not the developer, insurance, banking, financial institution, GTA, passenger transportation service, and multiplex cinema. These are, even though having the turnover more than prescribed limit, not required to issue the e-invoice. Not required to issue the e-invoice. Let me go back. E-invoicing would be applicable for supplies made to the registered party. It means, and for export. Agar aap, if you are making the supply to registered person, it is a B2B. Or in case of the B2C, only export. So B2B supply, e-invoicing is applicable. Export, e-invoicing is applicable. B2C domestic, no e-invoice is applicable. The last point which I like to tell you about e-invoicing, you will see the aggregate turnover of last year, last 2 year, last 3 year. आप जो 10 करोड़ का अमाउंट देखेंगे, you will check the aggregate turnover of more than 10 crore in which financial year? Any. Meaning thereby, if your turnover exceed the prescribed limit in any of the year, you will fall under e-invoice for the lifetime. किसी भी एक साल में अगर आपकी लिमिट एक्सीड कर जाती है फ्रॉम द प्रिस्क्राइब्ड लिमिट, इन दैट केस आप हमेशा इनवॉइस, ई-इनवॉइस बनाएंगे फॉर द एंटायर लाइफ. Multiple things which we have discussed. Let me revise. What is the e-invoice? E-invoicing means not generating the invoice on the government portal. We will make the invoice as per the current mechanism. But yes, after making the same, I will upload the details on the government portal. What is the name of the government portal? IRP. IRP. Fine. What is the time limit within which e-invoice has to be issued? It is on real time basis. As per the rule 48.5, it is clearly says that if e-invoicing is applicable and invoice has been issued in any manner other than prescribed, then it will not be treated as an invoice. फाइन, ई इनवॉइस इज एग्जेम्प्टेड। चलो इस क्वेश्चन का आंसर दो, किस केस में ई इनवॉइस नहीं बनाना है? इन विच सिचुएशन ई इनवॉइसिंग इज नॉट बी रिक्वायर्ड टू बी मेड? ट्राई टू थिंक एंड देन गिव द आंसर. Certain category we have discussed directly, but certain category we have discussed through this notification. Try to cover as many you can. What is my question? The question is that in which scenario e-invoice would not be applicable? This is my question. Invoice registration portal. What is the maximum scenario? Maximum. मतलब हमने तो कम से कम आई कैन से देयर कुड बी द 10 आंसर, देयर कुड बी द 10 आंसर फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन, देयर कुड बी द 10 पॉसिबिलिटी इन विच इनवॉइसिंग इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल. Try to think and then give the answer. Giving you 2 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Try to recall all the permutation combination and then give the answer. Meanwhile, Manish ji, Ashok ji, 10 मिनट का ब्रेक भी स्टार्ट कर दीजिए. 10 मिनट का ब्रेक स्टार्ट कर दीजिए. We will resume after 10 minutes. So my question was that in which situation we are not required to issue the e-invoice. That was my question. Correct. So what is the answer that you have given? Let me see the answer first. So we all know that in this category, government, SEZ unit, insurance, GTA, transportation, multiplex cinema, we are not required to issue the e-invoice. Second, if the aggregate turnover, please correct all. Please correct all. The current limit is if your aggregate turnover exceed 10 crore in any of the preceding financial year starting from 17-18. Absolutely correct. You are, wow, very nice. Can I take the ITC in case of e-invoicing? So e-invoicing में ITC का क्वेश्चन क्लियर नहीं हुआ. क्या कहना चाहते हैं? Not clear. So ITC would always be available. See, as if I have the invoice or e-invoice, ITC would be available. No? Correct. Then in case of the B2C, other than export, it is not required because we know that B2B plus export, it is required. So when it is not required, if my supply is made to the B2C customer and who is located in India, then I can say it is not required. E-invoicing is not required. All are correct. I think almost you have touched upon everything. You have touched upon everything. Very nice, yeah. Bhumika, Rashita, Shubham, then Divyansi, very nice. Shubham, very good. राजीव कुमार सिंह, ओके, आपने तो सब कुछ एक साथ कवर कर दिया, बहुत बढ़िया. भूमिका, हाँ. So the point is correct. Bhumika, your point is correct. Suppose I am required to issue the e-invoice, but I have not made the e-invoice. Can my customer take the ITC? So this would also be the question mark in time to come. Because there has to be the proper invoice. If I read the condition of the rule 36.1, if I go back to the ITC chapter, it talks about there has to be the proper invoice. And in case I have not made the invoice as per e-invoice method, then my document would not be called as invoice. In that case, probably in the time to come, there would be the question mark on the recipient ka ITC. Superb answer. Thank you so much for your active participation. Maja aa gaya. Now, we were talking about 10 common GST portals. So e-invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the total e-invoice portal. The three terms which we have used, IRP, invoice registration portal, IRN, invoice reference number, and QR code. What is the QR code? The IRP will also generate the QR code containing the IRN. IRN will also be called as hash, along with some important parameter of invoice, digital signature so that it can be verified on the central portal as well as by the offline app. This will be helpful for the tax official checking the invoice on the roadside where internet may not be available at all time. So the QR code consists of the following parameters: GSTN of the supplier and the recipient, invoice number as given by the supplier, date of invoice, value, number of line item, HSN code of the main item, unique invoice reference number, IRN. These would be the parameter of the QR code. Okay. What is the dynamic QR code? We will discuss. What is the dynamic QR code? We will discuss. Only one line I'm telling you. If aggregate turnover is more than 500 crore, if aggregate turnover is more than 500 crore and If aggregate turnover is more than 500 crore and you are making the supply to B2C customer other than export, dynamic QR code is applicable for B2C where e-invoice not applicable. एक बात बताना मुझे, please confirm. Export is B2C or B2B? Export is B2C or B2B? Export को मैं क्या कहूंगा? Is it B2B or B2C? Is it B2B or B2C? The answer is the export is B2C. For export, e-invoicing is applicable. एक बार आंसर दीजिए. I know that you all know the answer. Whether export e-invoicing is applicable. Whether export e-invoicing is applicable. The answer is yes. For export, e-invoicing is applicable. It means for B2B, you are making the e-invoice. For B2C, only export you are making the e-invoice. Now, B2C, other than export, you are not making the invoice. So for that category, the dynamic QR code will come into the picture. For that category, dynamic QR code will come into the picture. So for all B2C invoice, if aggregate turnover is more than 500 crore in any of the preceding financial year from 17-18, for B2C, you have the dynamic QR code. What is the concept of dynamic QR code? It promote the digital payment. It promote the digital payment. Means, I think you have seen at some places. See, when you scan the QR code, so for example, I'm going to the market and purchasing, let's say, 1,000 rupees ka item, and he is displaying the QR code. When I will scan the QR code, I will put manually the amount, and then I will make the payment. Am I right? ऐसा ही करते हैं ना. अगर मैं normally अगर QR code से payment करना चाहता हूं तो we are doing like this. But what is the dynamic QR code? In case the company is having the 500 crore turnover and making the supply B2C domestically, in that case, they will display the QR code, and once I will scan the QR code, automatically amount will come. Like Paytm, Google Pay, etc. Correct. Normally QR code. But what is the dynamic QR code? When you will scan the amount which you need to pay, it will automatically come. कभी आपने ऑब्जर्व किया होगा बड़ी कंपनीज के केस में, any organization which is having the more than turnover 500 or petrol pump can be the example, big hospitals can be the examples, or stop etc. can be the example. When you scan the QR code, automatically the amount will come, and that is dynamic QR code. The dynamic QR code, there is multiple circular in which they have given the multiple clarity. We will discuss some sort of the clarity. But this is the requirement of of dynamic QR code. Let's read some point of the dynamic QR code. Now I am moving to the institute study material. थोड़ी देर हम इसको डिस्कशन करते हैं. All B2C invoice issued by the registered person whose aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year from 17-18 exceed 500 crore will have the dynamic QR code. Sixth proviso to the Rule 46 empower the government to specify the tax invoice shall have the QR code resultant. It has notified the invoice issued by the registered person whose aggregate turnover in the financial year exceed 500 crore in respect of B2C shall have the dynamic QR code. Please note one thing, the specified class of the person which is not required to issue the dynamic, or which is not required, or which is not liable for dynamic QR code is the same as we have discussed in the E-invoicing, like government authority, local authority, government department, local authority, transportation service, transportation, passenger transportation service, goods transportation agencies, banking, financial institution, NBFC, multiplex cinema, all these are also exempted from dynamic QR code. The dynamic QR code made available to the buyer through digital display with payment cross-reference shall be deemed to have the QR code. The purpose of this provision is to enable and encourage the digital payment where buyer can scan the dynamic and make the payment from mobile wallet directly. Non-applicability of the dynamic QR code. Insurance, banking company, GTA, passenger transportation service, admission or to the exhibition of cinematographic film in the multiplex screen, and one more category, supply the online information database access retrieval services. Sorry, these are the category who are exempted. Slightly different, but yes, see that banking, financial institution, NBFC, GTA, passenger transportation, multiplex screen, and OIDAR is also being added. No dynamic QR code in case of the export. As regard the supplies made for the export, through such supplies are made by the registered person to an unregistered person. However, it is covered by e-invoicing, so dynamic QR code is not applicable. Dynamic QR code consists of the supplier GST number, UPI ID. That is the new thing. Bank account number and IFSC. Invoice number and date, total invoice value, GST amount that we have discussed. But these two, bank card detail and a supplier UPI ID, will be additionally. Okay. Further, dynamic QR code shall be such that it can be scanned to make the digital payment. Compliance with the dynamic QR code requirement in certain cases. हाँ, November 23 के एग्जाम के लिए इनवॉइसिंग का लिमिट वुड बी 10 करोड़. Just check what is the why are the multiplex exempted from QR code? The reasoning would be they have to issue, means for them probably it is not feasible for them and amount is very less. Probably that could be the reason. Now, case 1. If the supplier, see what we are discussing that compliance with the dynamic QR code requirement in certain cases. If the supplier has issued the invoice having the dynamic QR code for payment, said invoice shall be deemed to have been compliant with dynamic QR code. Situation number 1. If the supplier provides or display the dynamic QR code, but the customer opt to make the payment without using the dynamic QR code, and supplier provide the cross reference of the payment made without the dynamic QR code on the invoice, it will be deemed that such compliance has been made by the supplier. Situation. In case where the supplier has digitally displayed the dynamic QR code and customer pay for the invoice using UPI, credit card, debit card, online banking, or cash, or combination of the various mode of the payment with or without using dynamic QR code. An important thing, supplier provide the cross reference of the payment, transaction ID along with date, time and amount mode on the invoice. Next, in case without using dynamic QR code and supplier provide the cross reference of the amount paid in cash along with the date of the payment on the invoice shall be deemed to have been complied with the requirement of the dynamic QR code. थोड़ा theory होगा, little bit theory, but it is important. If the supplier, now second situation, if the supplier make available to the customer an electronic mode of the payment like UPI collect, UPI intent, similar other mode of the payment through mobile application or computer-based application where dynamic QR code is not displayed, but the details of the merchant as well as transaction are displayed or captured otherwise. In such case, if the cross-reference of the payment is made using such electronic mode is made on the invoice, the requirement is done, compliant. Case 3. In case of the prepaid invoice, the payment has been made before invoice. Again, same point. If the cross-reference of the payment, whether the supplier using such e-commerce portal or application will still be required to comply with the requirement of the dynamic QR code. Dynamic QR code requirement applies to each supplier or registered person separately. If such person is liable to issue the invoice with dynamic QR code for B2C supply. Now, in case the supplier is making the supply through e-commerce operator or application, and the said supplier gives cross-reference of the payment received on the invoice, such invoice would be deemed to have been complied with the requirement of dynamic QR code. In case other than prepaid supply, where the payment is made after generation of this invoice, the supplier shall provide the dynamic QR code on the invoice. These are all the cases wherein it will be deemed that dynamic QR code requirement has been complied with. So tax invoice, debit, credit note. Now let's read the for each and every document. Now we are reading the revised tax invoice. अभी कोई question है क्या पर मैं देख लेता हूँ. ठीक है, कोई question नहीं. Now before, so I will read the content of every 6 categories of the document which we have discussed. But for each, before reading the content of each document, you tell me what is the revised tax invoice. Just in brief, not required to talk in detail, just in brief. Revised tax invoice, very, very important. What is the revised tax invoice? What is the revised tax invoice? Jai Gandhi, just only one thing that they will provide the statutory update prior to exams also. Correct, na? So you will have the more clarity. I think already issued, na? Is it already issued, right? तो जो हम पढ़ते हैं statutory update, वो शायद नवंबर 23 वाला है ना. एक बार हम उसको भी रीड कर लेंगे. See, for every class we are reading that statutory update as well. We will read rest to be sure. Revised tax invoice क्या है? The two important term. Instead of the date of the liability, I will use the word effective date of the registration. Invoice already issued between effective date of the registration till date of registration. Then I will issue the revised invoice within how many days? Within how many days? Within how many months I have to issue the revised invoice? I have to issue the revised invoice within how many months? So the transaction supply is made between effective date till the date of the registration. I will issue the revised invoice within 1 month. Within 1 month from the date of the registration. Okay. Now let's read the content. What is the content? Exactly same what we have discussed in the invoice. Name, address, GST and number of the supplier. Same. Consecutive serial number not exceeding 16 character. Unique for a financial year. And 2 special character are allowed, dash and slash. Next, date of issue of the document. Name, address and the GST number and UIN if registered of the recipient. Name, address along with delivery, along with the name of the state and the code, unregistered. Okay. Serial number and date of the, this is correct. This is important. Serial number and date of the corresponding tax invoice, or as the case may be, bill of supply. Corresponding tax invoice. Okay. So name, address, GST, serial number and the date of the signature, digital signature. These are the content. Now, no tax invoice is required to be issued if value is less than rupees 200. Consolidated tax invoice can be made. Correct. When it can be made? If the recipient is unregistered, recipient does not require the invoice and the value should be less than 200. Consolidation at each day. Important क्या है? Each day का consolidation होगा. Now, what is the bill of supply? We have already discussed what is the bill of supply. In case if the supply is of exempted goods or services or supplier is registered under composition levy, then bill of the supply would be applicable. What is the content of the bill of supply? Name, address, GST number, 16 character, date, name, address and GSTN and UIN if registered, HSN code, description, value, signature, digital signature, etc. Now, invoice come bill of supply. This point we have not discussed. Let me explain you. Suppose I am making a taxable supplies as well as exempt supply. I am making the taxable as well as exempt supplies together. And my customer is unregistered. My customer is unregistered. Then I can issue the single document named as invoice cum bill of supply. One single document for taxable as well as exempted item. I can issue the single document named as invoice cum bill of supply. This is rule 46A. What is the receipt voucher? You have given me the answer that in case of the advance, the receipt voucher would be issued. Content, name, address, GST number of the supplier, consecutive serial number not exceeding 16 character, date of issue, name, address, GST number if registered, description of goods, amount of advance taken, the rate of the taxes, amount of the tax in respect of goods or services, place of the supply along with name of the state and code in case of the supplies interstate trade or commerce, whether the tax is payable under reverse charge, signature, digital signature or by supplier or his authorized representative. कोई क्वेश्चन एक बार देख लेता हूं मैं. बहुत से आंसर रिकॉल नहीं हो पा रहे हैं आज. क्यों भाई? क्यों बेटा ऐसा क्यों? ज्यादा आज तो बहुत सिंपल पढ़ रहे हैं और आज ज्यादा भी नहीं पढ़ रहे यार. मतलब आज टफ है क्या क्लास? Mohammed, it is not important. It is not important to remember all the particular of tax invoice. No, not at all. Not at all important. But because it is in our syllabus, so that I am trying to explain everything. Okay. Sure. Next is, this is again important. Rule 50 says if at the time of advance, rate of the taxes or nature of the supply is not determinable, assume that you have given me the advance. Is it inter or intra? I'm not sure. Is it for 5%, 12%, 18 or 28? I'm not sure. If in any situation that tax ka rate and the nature of the supply is not determinable, in that case, you will assume the rate as 18 and you will assume the supply as interstate. Because in case of the advance for supply of service, I need to pay the GST on advance. तो क्या रेट पे करूंगा, कितना पे करूंगा, कौन सा टैक्स पे करूंगा? I will pay IGST and I will pay 18%. What is the content of the refund voucher? So name, address, consecutive serial number, date of issue, same. Only one thing, that number and date of receipt voucher issued, that will come, because refund voucher would always be issued against receipt voucher, right? Amount of the refund, the rate of the taxes, description. Okay. Whether tax is payable under RCM, signature or digital signature. Payment voucher, we have already discussed that in case of RCM, it will be issued. What are the content? Name, address and GST number of the supplier, consecutive serial number not exceeding 16 character, date of issue, name, address, GST number of the recipient, description, amount paid, rate of the taxes, amount of the tax payable in respect of the taxable goods or services, place of the supply, along with name of the state and code in case the supply is inter, signature or digital signature. Now, this is important. Rule 54 and Rule 55, this is important. What is that? That government may, on the recommendation of the council by notification, they can specify any other document issued in relation to the supply shall be deemed to be the tax invoice, for which they have given the Rule 54. And tax invoice is not required to be issued. Following supplier may issue the tax invoice, but they are also permitted to issue any other document in lieu of the tax invoice by whatever name called. This discussion is very, very important. First, insurance, banking company, financial institution, NBFC. Which information are optional? Serial number. It is not mandatory for the bank to serially number their invoice. Address of the recipient of the taxable supplier service. तो दो इंफॉर्मेशन ऑप्शनल है, एक सीरियल नंबर और दूसरा एड्रेस. Which is mandatory? All other information which is being given in the Rule 46. One thing I have also discussed, that consolidated tax invoice. In case of the insurance, banking company can issue the consolidated tax invoice at the end of daily? No, at the end of every month. See, normally if the value is less than 200, the consolidation is possible for B2C. But if it is a banking company, that consolidation on daily basis. But if it is a banking company, then at the end of the month, he can issue the consolidated invoice or a statement or advice, any other document in lieu thereof by whatever name called, electronically or physically, for the supply of the service made during the month at the end of the month. Then signature or digital signature, or okay. Now we are talking about the GTA. GTA का information कैसा होगा? Again, government using the power of this particular part. Section 31 subsection 2 and proviso to 31(1). Using the power of these, they have prescribed the Rule 54 and 55 in which they can issue the document other than invoice, and even they can issue, or they are not required to issue any tax invoice. So in case of the GTA, these information are very important. So please take care. GTA के केस में वो जो डॉक्यूमेंट इशू करेंगे, क्रॉस वेट ऑफ द कंसाइनमेंट, नेम ऑफ द कंसाइनर एंड कंसाइनी, registration number of the goods carriage in which the goods are transported, details of the goods transported, place of origin and a destination, GSTIN number of the person liable for paying the tax, whether as consignor or consignee or GTA. Other information which is being prescribed for a tax invoice. So basically, I can say the GTA is normally issuing the consignment note or BT or LR by whatever name called. What is the requirement? Gross weight, consignor or consignee का नाम, vehicle का registration number, details of the goods transported, place of origin and place of destination, GSTI number of the person who is liable to pay the tax, and then other information as prescribed for a tax invoice under Rule 46. These are the additional details. Now we are talking about ticket. The passenger transportation service. What is not important? Same, which is applicable for the banking company. Serial number and address. What is important? So first they are saying tax invoice shall include ticket in any form by whatever name called. Okay? Whatever the information which is required in the Rule 46, except these two, address and serial number. Except these two, all other are mandatory. And ticket would also be considered as tax invoice. Now, by way of admission to the exhibition of the cinematographic film in the multiplex screen. What is optional? Details of the recipient. What is mandatory? Supplier is required to issue an electronic ticket, and said electronic ticket shall be deemed to be the tax invoice. The only relaxation that details of the recipient is not required. Now, one has asked the question. Now I will give the answer. Intentionally, I have not given the answer. Someone has asked the question. Who has asked the question? Let me read the question. I think Aisa. You have asked that why multiplex are exempted from e-invoicing or dynamic QR code. You see the Rule 54. You see the Rule 54 and Rule 55. In the four circumstances, they have given the certain relaxation. They have given certain relaxation and certain documentation also. Instead of tax invoice, they can issue the ticket. Banking company, financial institution, NBFC, GTA transportation services of goods, then passenger transportation service, and fourth is this multiplex screen cinema. In all these four cases, if you recall the provision of e-invoicing, all these four are exempted because in this case, certain information are relaxed, and if these are relaxed, then probably they will not be able to generate e-invoice or they will not be able to comply with the dynamic QR code. ठीक है, I hope it is clear. अभी आपका क्वेश्चन क्लियर हो ना? आयसा, आई थिंक आपने पूछा था ना? आयसा, हाँ आयसा सही. एनी क्वेश्चन यू प्लीज आस्क. जय गांधी अगर नहीं है तो फिर ठीक है ना, 10 करोड़ होगा, फिर 10 करोड़ होगा. बट वी विल डिस्कस इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास. माई लास्ट क्लास वुड बी ऑन दिस संडे. मेरी सिर्फ एक क्लास बची हुई ई वे बिल के रिगार्ड में, दैट आई विल कवर ऑन द संडे. मैं वो संडे को कवर कर लूंगा. ठीक है, why invoice come below the supply facility provided for the supply to unregistered person? The first reason that because normally if you go to the big bazaar or smart bazaar or any online, if you do the shopping, so you will purchase multiple items, taxable as well as exempted. So if supplier is required to issue the two different documents, then it will be the unnecessary problem for him. So they are saying you can issue the single document. ठीक है, today is too much theory. आज थ्योरी ज्यादा हो गया ऐसा. आज थ्योरी ज्यादा हो गया ऐसा, कॉम्बिनेशन है, बट प्लीज डू नॉट ट्रीट इज थ्योरी यार, इस थ्योरी को भी है ना प्रैक्टिकली समझो, मतलब ट्राई टू, मतलब आई कैन ओनली से दैट ट्राई टू ट्रीट द सेम एज अ प्रैक्टिकल पार्ट, बट प्रोविजन तो याद करना ही पड़ेगा, राइट? कविता, ये तो देखो इंस्टीट्यूट का कॉल है ना, तो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी वो डिवाइड उनका काम है, देखो कौन सा लेक्चर कौन से फैकल्टी को देना है, दे विल डिसाइड। सो यू विल हैव द मतलब मींस मिक्स ऑफ द फैकल्टीज एज वेल, कॉम्बिनेशन आपको मिल जाएगा तो आपके लिए भी बेटर रहेगा। तो नाउ डिलीवरी चलान, अच्छा, the delivery challan is to be made in four circumstances. The delivery challan is to be made in the four circumstances. If supply of the liquid gas. Why they are giving the delivery challan? Because when you are removing the goods, which goods? Liquid gas. Then quantity is not known at the time of the removal. Because जब तक वो पहुंचेगा तब तक कुछ उड़ जाएगा. Then because you don't know the quantity, therefore you cannot make the tax invoice. Here the facility is being given that if it is a supply the liquid gas, yes, it can be delivered based on the delivery challan. Second, the transportation of goods for job work. Transportation of goods for job work, because we know that we are just moving the goods for job work purpose. It is not a sale. मैं साड़ी का बिजनेस करता हूं, लेट्स से, एंड वो साड़ी मैंने अपने जॉब वर्कर को दी फॉर एम्ब्रॉयडरी वर्क. So when I'm sending the goods to the job worker, it is not the supply, correct? So they are saying that first, if it is a supply, the liquid gas, where the quantity is not known at the time of removal. Second, the transportation of goods of job worker. Third is for reason other than supply. What could be the, let's say I have received the work contract. I am registered in Haryana. I have received the work. I am registered in Haryana. My place of business is Gurgaon. Let's say I have received one work order for Rohtak. It is also in Haryana. So I have to shift my machine, which is to be used for providing the service. Correct? Let's say I am a teacher. Okay. And I am providing the teaching. For that, I have to carry my camera, my laptop, everything. But if I am carrying from one location to the another location, in that case, is it a supply? No, sir, it is not a supply. Transport. So, जब मैं ये camera move करूंगा, when I will move the laptop, when I will move these machines for carrying out my service, my supply, in that case, for movement, you need the document. That document would be the delivery challan. And last is for certain notified category. Last is as may be notified by the government, as may be notified by the board. Now the question is, in case of the delivery challan, what is the content? Delivery challan to be issued serially number not exceeding 16 character in one or multiple series at the time of removal. Particular the delivery challan, date and number, name, address and GST number, name, address, GST or UIN if registered, HSN code and description, quantity, Provisional, where the exact quantity not known. Taxable value, tax का amount, ठीक है, place of the supply and signature. These all are the content. Point to be noted, if Mr. A, who is having the aggregate turnover more than 10 crore, then E-invoicing is applicable. The E-invoicing would be applicable on 3 documents: tax invoice, debit note, or credit note. If Mr. A is required to make any other document like receipt voucher, payment voucher, delivery challan, will that also be through IRP, invoice registration portal? Answer is no. Only 3 documents, remember, tax invoice, debit note, and credit note will be generated through E-invoice portal. Rest all the document would normally be prepared from your software, accounting software. Does not require any IRN or QR code. Again, it will be delivery challan would be made in triplicate. Okay. Declaration of e-way bill. So next class, last class Sunday, we will discuss about the e-way bill. Okay. What is the e-way bill? And when we are generating the e-way bill, we need one document. It would be either tax invoice or debit note or delivery challan. In case of import, there is one more requirement, that it should be bill of entry. Where the goods being transported are for the purpose of the supply to the recipient, but the tax invoice could not be issued at the time of removal of the goods for the purpose of supply, then supplier shall issue the tax invoice after delivery of goods. So this is one, I can say, some relaxation. Let's say we are talking about supply of the liquid gas. Let's say liquid gas. In case of the liquid gas, it is a supply, right? But can you make the tax invoice? Can you make the tax invoice? Because see, try to understand, normally, what is the last date to issue the tax invoice for goods? Try to recall the provision. In case of the goods where the movement is involved, what is the last date? The last date would be date of removal, right? But in case of the liquid gas, you cannot make the tax invoice because quantity is not known. So Rule 55 sub rule 4 says, if it is a supply and because of any reason you could not make the tax invoice, then you can make the invoice at the time of after the delivery also. Instead of supply removal, you can make the tax invoice at the time of removal. The perfect example is liquid gas. ये बात clear हुई? कई बार हमें मालूम नहीं चलता ये रूल किसके लिए बनाया है. Why they are giving the relaxation? I have given one E-invoice to be issued based on some document, not based on some document, based on invoice only. E-invoice would be based on invoice, credit note, debit note. ठीक है. From this page number 44, we will do the same in the last class, but this is the last discussion. Goods transported in the SKD, CKD condition or the batch in the lot. What is the SKD or what is the CKD? Semi knockdown and complete knockdown. It means, let's say there is a one plant and machinery which I have to transport from one location to the another location, and it cannot be carried in a single conveyance. So let's say I have dismantled, I have divided in 2-3 parts. Now I am moving that particular machine in 2-3 trucks, or the goods are being sent in the batch or in the lots. Then they are saying supplier shall issue the complete invoice before dispatch of the first consignment. पहले invoice बनाना पड़ेगा if it is a supply. I'm assuming if it is a supply. Then supplier shall issue the delivery challan for each of the subsequent consignment. Because therefore, see, tax invoice would be one, but you are sending that machine or you are sending the goods in 2-3 lots. Then first, if it is a supply, you will prepare the complete tax invoice, one tax invoice, but you are removing the goods in 2-3 conveyance. Then they are saying the supplier shall issue the delivery challan for each of the subsequent consignment in which he will give the reference of invoice. Third is copy of the corresponding delivery challan shall accompany each consignment along with the duly certified copy of the invoice. So these are the documentation. Now over to you for asking any question. Or original copy of the invoice shall be sent along with the last consignment. In the last class, we will start from here. ठीक है, यहाँ से start करेंगे. And credit note, debit note, then we will move to the e-way bill. अशोक जी आप सेंटर में कर सकते हैं. अब मैं last 15 minutes I will ask the quick round of the question answer. So you can make me in center. So any question please ask, otherwise I will ask the multiple question which we normally do. ठीक है, and मैं 1 मिनट वेट कर रहा हूं आपके किसी क्वेश्चन का, otherwise I will start. चलो फाइन, ठीक है. Sir, there have been any amendment in rule 46? लास्ट क्लास में देख लेंगे. स्टैच्यूटरी अपडेट में कोई अमेंडमेंट अगर रह गया है तो वी विल डिस्कस, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द डिस्कशन, मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स हैज बीन कवर्ड. In case of the goods sent on approval, is there any document required for record to be made at the time? Diksha, you tell me. Very good question. Very good question. Now let me ask this question to all. If you are sending the goods on sales on approval, कौन से document पर आप remove करोगे? Which document you will remove? On which document you will remove the goods? सुशील ऑलरेडी आंसर कर दिया मैंने. क्रेडिट नोट, डेबिट नोट और इनवॉइस और टैक्स इनवॉइस. मोहम्मद, आई एम टेकिंग योर पॉइंट आफ्टर दिस क्वेश्चन. आई हैव द डाउट. मैं 2 मिनट दीजिए मुझे, मैं आपके क्वेश्चन को लेता हूं. मीनवाइल आई एम आस्किंग द क्वेश्चन दैट इफ यू आर सेंडिंग द गुड्स ऑन अप्रूवल, सेल्स ऑन अप्रूवल, विच डॉक्यूमेंट यू विल यूज फॉर रिमूविंग द गुड्स? वेरी ट्रू. मोहम्मद, मीनवाइल आप मुझे एक आंसर करो, आप मुझे एक आंसर करो. PMT, you know the PMT 09. Do you know the PMT 09? What is the PMT 09? Just I'm asking one question. Do you know the PMT 09? What is the PMT 09? So, answer to my question. क्या बात है, बहुत कम लोग रिप्लाई कर रहे हैं. What happened? पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहे मेरे क्वेश्चन का, आप आंसर नहीं दे रहे सब लोग. You are not giving the reply to my question. What is my question? If you are sending the goods on approval, sales on approval, which document you will use for moving the goods? I have only received 3-4 replies. ये अच्छी बात नहीं है. That's not correct. ऐसे मत करो यार. चलो, let me give the answer. The answer is delivery challan, because just now we have discussed in the rule 55 that delivery challan would be made in case of the other than supply, in case of the movement of the goods other than supply. ठीक है. Point Muhammad, which you ask, that if you have the SGST or UTGST under the cash, can you transfer it to distinct person? The answer would be no. But there is one solution. Which question is being asked by, what question is being asked by Muhammad? Let me tell you all. He's asking that CGST or IGST can be transferred to the distinct person. But can I transfer SGST to the other distinct person? Answer is no, because that state would different. So directly you cannot transfer. But there is one alternate or adjustment way. Within the GST number, can you transfer SGST to CGST? Within GST number, I'm not talking about the distinct person. I am not talking about the distinct person. I'm talking about within GST number. Suppose in my Haryana, I have the amount under SGST, cash tax. Can I transfer this amount to my tax penalty of CGST or IGST? Yes, I can. So now the reply to your question. I have the SGST or UTGST, which I like to transfer to the another GST number of same PAN. What to do? First, you transfer this to your CGST or IGST, no restriction. And then this C or I can be transferred to the distinct person. Clear? एक बार confirm करना. Is facility of the digital payment done? Dynamic QR code. What is the dynamic QR code? Fine. Tell me one thing, that consolidated tax invoice, when it can be consolidated per day, and in which circumstances it is allowed to do the consolidation per month. My question is, consolidated tax invoice, when I can do on daily basis and when I can do on monthly basis. Please tell. लंबा बड़ा क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया मैंने. थोड़ा आंसर फटाफट करो यार. मैं 1 मिनट वेट करूंगा, फिर मैं खुद ही आंसर दे दूंगा, क्योंकि फिर अदरवाइज मैं नंबर ऑफ क्वेश्चन ज्यादा नहीं पूछ पाता. द आंसर इज, इफ इट इज daily basis, when amount is less than 200, B2C, customer does not want the invoice, then I can do the consolidation on daily basis. When it can be on monthly basis, in case of the banking company, at the end of the month, they can issue the invoice consolidated. Next question to all of you. The next question to all of you, that what is the time limit to issue the invoice by the telecom company? What is the time limit to issue the invoice for supply the service by the telecom operator to its customer, not a distinct person, to its customer? What is the time limit? What is the time limit to issue the invoice by telecom operator to its customer? Answer is 30 days or 45 days or quarter. Very true. Thank you so much. The answer is 30 days. Answer is 30 days. ठीक है. Answer is 30 days. Who is required to pay the GST on advance for supply of the goods? Who is required to pay the GST on advance for supply of the goods? Question is, who is required to pay the GST on advance for supply of the goods? The right answer is, absolutely, you all have given the correct answer. The right answer is composition taxpayer. Composition taxpayer. Can you tell me whether SEZ developer are exempted from e-invoicing? Whether SEZ developer are exempted from e-invoicing? Answer is yes. SEZ unit are exempted, but not the developer. SEZ unit are exempted, but not the developer. So in my question, SEZ developer are covered by e-invoicing. Please tell me the aggregate turnover for e-invoicing. What is the prescribed aggregate turnover beyond which e-invoicing is applicable? Aggregate turnover आज की तारीख में, I'm not talking about for future. As on current date, what is the prescribed limit beyond which e-invoicing is applicable? Beyond which e-invoicing is applicable? The answer is current date. Let's say I'm talking about 18th July. The answer is 10 crore. And what is the prescribed limit? What is the prescribed limit? What is the prescribed limit for dynamic QR code? What is the prescribed limit for dynamic QR code? What is the prescribed limit for applicability of the dynamic QR code? Answer is 500 crore. Which financial year you will look? Which financial year you will look? Which financial year you will look for checking this prescribed limit, whether it is for e-invoicing or dynamic QR code? Last financial year, last 2 financial year, last 3, which financial year you will look? For deciding the applicability of e-invoice and similarly for dynamic QR code. Absolutely correct. The right answer is 17. Any financial year starting from 17-18. Tell me, if customer does not want the tax invoice, my supply is B2C and value of the supply is 50,000. Is it mandatory to report the address or not mandatory? Customer does not want. Transaction is B2C. Value is 50,000. Is it mandatory for the supplier to issue the invoice along with address and name of the state and the code or not? Answer is that if the value is 50,000 or more greater than equal to, then it is mandatory to report the address and state code and state ka name, etc. It's mandatory. Now, please tell me, if my aggregate turnover is greater than 5 crore, how much digit is required for B2B and how much digit is required for B2C, and whether it is optional for B2C. If my aggregate turnover is greater than 5 crore, number of the digit of HSN code to be reported on the invoice, plus second question, whether it is optional for B2C or mandatory. My aggregate turnover exceed 5 crore. The answer is 6 digit and it is mandatory. The optional is when your aggregate turnover is less than or up to 5 crore, I can say. If your aggregate turnover exceeding 5 crore, it is mandatory to report 6 digit for both B2B as well as B2C. Next question. What is when my supply would be called as continuous supply of the service? मेरी सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस को कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई का नाम कब दिया जाएगा? When my supply would be considered as continuous supply of the service. Exceed 3 month and periodical payment. Thank you so much to all the participants who has used these two terms. More than 3 months and there is a periodical payment. What is the time limit in case of the continuous supply of the goods? What is the time limit of continuity in case of the supply of the goods? मेरी गुड्स की सप्लाई को कंटिन्यूस कहने के लिए कितना नंबर ऑफ डेज इज रिक्वायर्ड? The answer is no period is mentioned. No period is mandatory. For continuous supply the goods, there is no mandatory requirement for a certain number of the days, but your services, it is more than 3 months. Last question. What is the time limit for issuance of tax invoice in case of the continuous supply of service? What is the last date to issue the tax invoice in case continuous supply of service? Last date क्या है? Continuous supply the service. The answer is there are 3 clauses. Due date is ascertainable, then due date. If not ascertainable, actual payment. And if it is linked to the completion of an event, then the date of the completion of an event will be the last date to issue the taxes. By this, I have completed my today class. Any question, I'll wait for you. I'll wait for the question. And otherwise, we can complete our class. I'll wait for 2 minutes or I'll wait for 2 minutes. If you have any question, kindly ask. Absolutely correct, Darshan. Fine. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you, Darshan. Enjoy कर रहे हो ना सब लोग लेक्चर को, या थ्योरी बोल के सर के ऊपर से जा रहे हैं? All are enjoying the discussion, right? ऐसा तो नहीं माइंड के ऊपर से जा रहा है डिस्कशन? So shall go back to the payment of tax class. You will understand. I have opened the GST portal. Government portal भी मैंने open किया था and I have explained GST का portal and I have explained what is the PMT9. एक बार आप वो वीडियो देखिए, ठीक है? Thank you very much. Good night to all of you. Sukh ji, you can close the class. Wind up. आज का